In today's video, we're going to be running through my early transfer targets ahead of FPL Game Week 35. Of course, if you do enjoy any of the content that you see here on the FPL Tom YouTube channel, make sure you're liking, make sure you're subscribing, and any questions, get them in the comments. Now, before we dive into the player picks, as always with my transfer targets videos, I like to take a look at the projected data for the next few game weeks. I do feel like it gives you a good idea of what teams you realistically want to be targeting for the next 4 to 5 game weeks. And of course, with us only having a few game weeks left, with some sides only having 4 fixtures, I feel like this data is even better. Of course, this is coming from Solio as well. If you want to go and check out their amazing website, link in the description for that one. But up first, we are going to take a look at the projected clean sheets. Now, of course, Manchester City and Crystal Palace still could potentially double. There is still a scenario as well where Bournemouth may double as well. And if that was to be the case, City would still double in 36. Bournemouth would then double in 36. But their fixture against Manchester City would then be blanked in game week 37 because it's moved into game week 36. And Crystal Palace obviously still have to play Manchester City at some point. So then they will double in game week 37 if that was to be the alternative scenario. However, the more likely outcome is going to be a City double in 36, as you can see there, and a Crystal Palace double for them in 36 as well. So with that, City are the top side for projected clean sheets this game week. Of course, we know who we're realistically going to be looking at from the defensive standpoint. It is going to be Nico O'Reilly. He is arguably one of the most explosive players within FPL right now. He's honestly just a magnet for points from every single kind of avenue that you could expect from a defender. Some pretty nice fixtures in there as well. Obviously, the double as well. Maybe you could potentially look at an alternative captaincy option if you're really not feeling Erling Haaland. Arsenal, obviously, you know, Gabriel, Raya. I think a lot of people are probably going to be at least double, maybe even triple Arsenal defence for this good run-in that they've got. Their big standout fixture in game week 37 up against Burnley at home with a 58% probability of a clean sheet. Leeds have still got some nice fixtures. So, of course, if you've got some of the Leeds players left over, definitely not, you know, sells for the next few weeks. Burnley at home in game week 35. Tottenham, a pretty nice fixture. Brighton, West Ham to end out the season as well. So if you have got some Leeds players, still some pretty nice fixtures in there as well. Same obviously goes with Brighton. They've obviously got their big standout fixture in game week 36 with Wolves at home. Leeds away in 37 as well. So again, if you've got obviously a Pascal Gross, a Verbergen, still very, very easy players to play during that time period as well. I wouldn't be, you know, kind of worrying too much about potentially, you know, looking to sell off some of those players quickly. In terms of Crystal Palace, then obviously they have the double. They've got an okay fixture in game week 35 up against Bournemouth. However, they do have European football. So do bear that in mind when targeting Crystal Palace players, and we are going to talk about that in today's video. That's where realistically their focus is going to be. They've got Premier League safety. They can't qualify for Europe through the Premier League route, so all their kind of, you know, efforts are going to be realistically on the Europa Conference League to get them into the Europa League for next season. Of course, win some silverware as well for the club. So I think realistically the Premier League is probably going to be rotated quite a bit, especially now that the European games are coming up. So one on this Thursday, one the following Thursday as well for Crystal Palace. So do bear that in mind when, of course, if you are going to select any Palace players with their double in mind. Let's move on then, and let's take a look at the projected goals then for the upcoming weeks. Again, we're seeing Manchester City very strong on that metric. Some very, very good games for projected goals. Of course, the double as well. Haaland, if you've still got that triple captaincy chip left, definitely would be looking to play on him that week as well. We've obviously got Cherki. Semenyo missing out on the FA Cup. Now, it is a heavily rotated side that Manchester City have put out in the FA Cup. Whether or not, you know, maybe Semenyo's just having a break. He's played a lot of games in recent weeks, or maybe there might be something a little bit more to it. That is one to definitely monitor. And I feel if we are going to move Semenyo out, Cherki would probably be the guy I would be realistically looking to go for from that Manchester City attack. We're also seeing some decent numbers in there for Arsenal. So maybe obviously with Havertz going off, potentially Gyökeres could be back on the menu. Eze with his goal today as well. Declan Rice potentially. There are some decent options. Saka back on the bench. Probably maybe a little bit too soon for him, but again, could be a nice option with some great fixtures coming up for those on wildcard in game week 35. Liverpool still have some pretty nice fixtures as well. So if you've invested into their attack already, you know, a Dominic Szoboszlai is still going to be a pretty decent hold. If you've obviously got your Chelsea assets from game week 32 as well on the wildcard, they've got Nottingham Forest this week, decent projected goals. They've also got Tottenham and Sunderland to end off the season. So I don't feel like Palmer and João Pedro are going to be necessarily instant sells or players that I realistically want to be getting rid of instantaneously. So, yeah, it could be worth holding on to them as well. Brighton, we're also seeing the similar picture. Newcastle, Wolves, Leeds, Manchester United. Again, Pascal Gross, Danny Welbeck, definitely not instant sells. Newcastle, as you can see, some great fixtures coming up for them, but unfortunately, they're just not quite at the races or so far within this first half of the Arsenal game. I brought Bruno Guimaraes into my team, and I do think he could be a nice option, especially if Gordon is going to remain out. That means he will have all the set pieces, corners, free kicks. He'll have the penalties as well, can hit defensive contributions, and is very, very good at home for Newcastle United. So maybe you're looking at game week 37 and game week 35. He could be a player that really does go off quite big during that period. Again, same with your Leeds and your Bournemouth players. They've got fine fixtures where you could realistically hold these players. They're not instant sells heading into this game week if you, of course, pick them up on the wild card in game week 32. So I wouldn't worry about them too deeply. That, of course, is going to be the Solio data for this game week. Like I said, if you want to go and check out their amazing website, I will leave a link in the description to it. But let's move into some individual player picks ahead of game week 35. Okay, then the first place we've got to start is that Friday night game. Gibbs White again with another double-digit haul. He was a player that I did recommend last game week. I said he's got that talismanic kind of feel to him, and that definitely came to fruition on the game on Friday night. He had his chances. Like I said, when he got them, he took them. He obviously finished his goal very, very nicely, and still under 10% owned. Now, the problem is the fixtures probably aren't there from a, an FDR perspective. There isn't too much green, but I wouldn't worry about that too much. Like I said, Forest still probably need a few more points with both Spurs and West Ham winning today. You feel like they're probably going to need some more wins on the board. They've got Chelsea away. Chelsea are really all over the shop. I know obviously they've just sacked their manager. However, still seem like a side that are devoured of confidence. A lot of the players obviously, maybe looking to move in the summer as well, stuff like that. Newcastle, again, another side that are really shot of confidence. I don't think Eddie Howe is going to be there past the season. United, I do think is probably a bit of a tricky test, but if, you never know when it comes to that relegation points. And then finally, Bournemouth on the final day at home for Nottingham Forest. If they do need something out of that, you do feel like a talisman kind of figure in Morgan Gibbs-White is definitely going to be part of that. And honestly, like I said, right now, he's arguably one of the most informed players within the Premier League, and he's got to be thinking to himself as well, if I keep up these performances, number one, get Forest safe. I get a fat payday off the back of that because of obviously all the contracts that go into, Premier League footballers stuff. And also could potentially be playing himself onto the plane for the World Cup as well, if he continues these very, very good performances. And like I said, he does feel like, for me right now, if Nottingham Forest are going to score, he's kind of got the goal involvements, or you open FOTMob, you look who scored, it's going to be Gibbs White. That's the kind of feel I'm getting from this guy. And, when you get players like that, very similar to like Jarrod Bowen for West Ham, who we're going to talk about in a second, those are the guys that usually score very, very well in FPL and always pretty decently priced. And as you can see here, very, very good for that. Obviously, there are some other Forest players we're going to talk about in today's video, but I feel like if you are in the market for a midfielder this game week and you are looking to kind of, see out a guy who's got pretty decent form, and like I said, does feel a little bit talismanic, I think Gibbs White could be a decent option for this game week. Maybe a little bit of recency bias given obviously his 2 double-digit hauls, but I still feel, like I said, with all the factors outside of that, keeping Nottingham Forest in the Premier League, maybe playing for his place on the World Cup plane as well, I think he's going to have a pretty decent end to the season. Another player that I think, you maybe could consider, and one that I haven't really seen recommended by many people, is going to be Chris Wood. Obviously back from injury now. He's the penalty taker for Nottingham Forest. Took his goal very well last night. And he's got 3 goals despite playing very limited minutes. He's got good underlying data. Like I said, penalties as well for Chris Wood. We know what this guy can do when he gets a decent run of games. When he's fit and available in a Nottingham Forest shirt, he can be lethal. Cast your minds back to last season. He was one of the most deadly players within the game. He's now back fit. And obviously Nottingham Forest need him to keep chipping away with the goals. Again, the fixtures from an FDR standpoint aren't the most appealing, but I think at this point of the season, you probably got to look past that and see what people still have to play for. And Nottingham Forest are one of those sides that need to keep winning games to keep themselves away from, the drop. The problem that we've got with Nottingham Forest, and it's very similar to Crystal Palace, is now that they've won this game, they might be thinking probably we only need one more win. So what we might see around the Chelsea, around the Newcastle games, is potentially some rotation. They've got obviously Aston Villa in the Europa League semi-final this Thursday and the following Thursday as well. So that is something to potentially think about if you are going to bring in either Morgan Gibbs-White or potentially Chris Wood. Is that European football going to affect their Premier League performance and potential minutes? You feel like with that win yesterday, maybe that could be in the back of their minds that they might be thinking we only need a couple more points to get safety within the Premier League, but we could get back into Europe next season and the Champions League as well if they, of course, win the Europa League. A massive game, two-legged against Villa as well. Honestly, could be huge for Nottingham Forest. So that also might be starting to weigh on their minds a little bit, especially after such a convincing win, boosting up their goal difference as well. So that is something to maybe monitor with your Nottingham Forest players, is they might realistically think we need one more win and the focus will then switch to European football. That is all I would be kind of cautious of if I was going to go for Chris Wood or Gibbs-White this game week. But other than that, they are very, very good players. And like I said, both feel pretty instrumental to Nottingham Forest survival hopes this season within the Premier League. The final player, again, very much a massive part of a team's survival hopes. It is going to be Jarrod Bowen. If you've been around this channel, you know that I absolutely love Jarrod Bowen, and he's continuing to do the business, isn't he? 2 assists today, pulling West Ham out of it. He is Mr. West Ham ultimately, isn't he? He's on penalties as well, has set piece share, and is the only forward that semi-regularly kind of hits those defensive contributions as well. So for me, I'm always going to recommend Jarrod Bowen. Yes, the fixtures are a little bit scattered. Arsenal at home in game week 36 isn't the most ideal. However, when the pressure is on for both teams, you never know what could happen. And again, when West Ham usually score, I guarantee Jarrod Bowen's got some sort of goal involvement in that. Like I said, he is so instrumental to this West Ham side, and if they are going to remain within the Premier League, I feel like Bowen is definitely going to have his say during that. Again, another player who is going to be playing for his place on that World Cup plane as well. You look at some of the fixtures, that Leeds one on game week 38 could be massive for both sides' survival hopes as well. And ultimately, like I said, Jarrod Bowen fits the profile that I like to look for my players, multiple avenues to points, and is a talisman for his side. Honestly, if you haven't already, definitely would be looking to invest in Jarrod Bowen. He's just so good, and I really do have a soft spot for the guy, but he continues to deliver every single season, gets points, has multiple routes to them as well, and is just a great forward to be selecting for this game week. Now, my next pick might seem a little bit knee-jerk after his goal today. However, he is a player that I've definitely been monitoring over the past few game weeks. Like I said, if you're new to the channel, you don't know, I do have my own model that kind of tracks players' points per game. And Dewsbury Hall this season has just been one of those players that every single time my model has suggested as a potential option for me to go and bring into my side, I've just ignored it because I thought, I look at his price tag, I go 5.1 million. But you look what he does when he gets on the pitch, and his points per game, like I said, ladies and gentlemen, are absolutely ridiculous. Again, another player that does have avenues to points as well, has hit defensive contributions in the past, but I realistically wouldn't be expecting that. He does have some set piece share as well, which is nice to see, but his open play threat is absolutely ridiculous this season. And like I said, he is one of those players, when it comes down to points per game, it's just phenomenal for it. Now, it isn't an ideal fixture in game week 35. However, Everton are chasing European football this season, so every game for them does matter. And you look after the City game, there are some great fixtures in here for Everton. I think Dewsbury Hall very easily could work his way into my side at some point this season. Game week 36 could be off the back of Palace's second, Europa League game, Europa Conference League game. So that could have gone to penalties, could have gone to extra time, an extra 120 minutes, a heavily rotated Palace side. That could be an easy win there. Sunderland seem like they're maybe a little bit shot. There's rumours obviously circulating that they might be departing the manager. Again, Tottenham on the final day, we don't know what Tottenham could need. We don't know what Everton could need. That could be a game where both sides have got to ultimately win that fixture. And like I said, Kieran Dewsbury Hall is just picking up points every single week from multiple different directions, and he's just so good from a points per game perspective. Now, he isn't the only Everton attacker that I realistically would be considering as well. We've got Iliman and Dye, again, can hit defensive contributions, has the penalties as well for Everton. That is a metric that I always like to look to target. And we've also got James Garner, DEFCON, and set pieces as as well, which has been an ideal combination given the kind of, ecosphere of the Premier League this season. But I do really like Dewsbury Hall. He is a player that I feel is going massively under the radar and isn't really being talked about by too many FPL managers. I don't think this is the ideal week with Manchester City at home in game week 35. However, longer term, 36, 37, 38, I think Everton could be a team to target if they've still got a lot to play for as well in terms of European qualification. I feel like a player that's going to have, again, a big part to play in that and maybe try and get himself on the World Cup plane. It is going to be Dewsbury Hall. And like I said, if you are somebody that looks to target points per game, Dewsbury Hall is one of those players that does exceptionally well from that metric. Final section of players then, it is going to be the Crystal Palace boys. Like I said, with that double game week in mind, I feel like realistically, we all know the Manchester City assets we want to buy. We'll obviously wait for updates regarding Semenyo if it was just, a rest or he has something more serious that then we've got to consider. But I feel like most people will move to Turkey or a second Manchester City defender. But Crystal Palace, I don't feel like anybody has really got them. Maybe you're on the wild card for game week 35. Maybe you're looking to bring some in ahead of their double. The problem, like I said, is it's just those 2 European games. I think we maybe could see quite a bit of rotation from Crystal Palace. We've already seen that early doors, within the Premier League around some of their European games as well. But let's talk about some of the options that I think you could consider. I think realistically, defensively is where you're going to get the most kind of value for your buck over the course of a double game week. Now, they've got some decent options here that have multiple avenues to points. Canvot, I believe it's pronounced. Someone correct me if I'm wrong in the comments. 4.5 million for him, 65 points. And as you can see, 70% of his games, he's managed to hit defensive contributions. That is an absolutely wild number, by the way, ladies and gentlemen. So fair play to him and maybe an underrated pick going a little bit under the radar. Again, points per start, as you can see, 5.8 for him so far this season. Daniel Munoz, we all know what he's capable of. Goal today for him. He is more obviously the attacking threat kind of guy, but as you can see, can also occasionally chip in with those defensive contributions as well. Got good underlying data to go with it, and the points per start are also pretty decent. And then finally, you've got Lacroix and Richards as well. Very similar kind of options here. Again, those centre-back kind of profiles, both with, decent strike rates in terms of their defensive contributions as well. Lacroix slightly ahead of Richards, so if you've got the money in the bank, definitely consider Lacroix ahead of him. And finally, for the attacking options, you've got Ismail Assar and you've got John-Philippe Mateta. The problem with both of these guys is I think they could be exceptional pickups for, obviously, across this double game week. The problem is rotation. Palace have decent other options there. They've got Strand Larson ready to go. They've also obviously got, Pino, Johnson. They can play in very similar positions to Sarr as well. So I think realistically, I can't say that both of them see decent minutes across the double game week. So my focus realistically would be looking at the defenders. That is where I feel like they're going to rotate a little bit less. You could also maybe go for Dean Henderson as well as your goalkeeper pick. Obviously, I don't expect them to rotate the goalkeeper, but you never know with these European games. They might be giving breaks to everybody. We're going to have to still wait and see what happens with that double game week if it does go ahead. But like I said, for me, realistically, I'm probably just going to be focusing on the defenders rather than any of the attacking kind of players. Let's finish up then today's video and take a look at my model. If you want to come and check it out for yourself, it is available in the FPL Cartel, which is my exclusive Discord group. Obviously, we do team reviews on stream and throughout the week. We also have our exclusive podcast and we have my model as well. This is its top players for predicted points for the game week 35. Interestingly, Bruno ahead of Haaland. We'll have to wait and see. It's going to be a tight call in terms of captaincy for this game week. Definitely going to be between those two for it as well. I've spoke about obviously your Chelsea players, maybe giving them another chance with the fixture. João Pedro, Palmer featuring both on this list as well. If you brought in Morgan Rogers for this week, again, probably give him another opportunity to potentially deliver. 5.3 projected points for him there. Bruno Guimaraes, a player that I brought in this game week on penalties. If Gordon's still out, set piece share, DEFCON can obviously score in open play as well. Could be a nice, tidy option to potentially consider longer term as well. That is going to conclude today's video. Of course, if you did enjoy it, make sure you like it, make sure you're subscribing, make sure you're getting your comments in as well. And if you want to come and chat to me more about your team, get yourself involved in the FPL Cartel. Link for that one in the description. And the best of luck, ladies and gentlemen, in FPL Game Week 35.